And now it's time, of course, to look at some of the stories making headlines in the weekend newspapers. To help me do that, I'm joined by Deputy Editor at the Mail and Guardian, Beauregard Tromp. Beauregard, thank you. I'm always very appreciative of people who give up their Sunday mornings to come and join me. Let me start with your paper. Get straight to the point. A comedy of errors, spelling mistakes, wrong email addresses, misplaced subpoenas behind the public protector's battle with the banks. This woman has taken a battering in the courts, and now it seems as if she's sending FNB subpoenas to ABSA. What's going on?
Well, it seems there was a real mix-up over there. So the subpoena ended up with ABSA. ABSA says, well, this is the wrong subpoena. Tries to contact them again, the PP's office. PP's office, unfortunately, a spelling error in the email address. Back and forth, PP insists, I sent you the subpoena, I got this from you. Then the presidency in the interim, but this is the biggest story, right? The biggest story really is that the presidency is saying, where did you get our bank records from? And because you have to show a chain of evidence, right? And so the PP's office says, I got it from the FIC.
Yes.
The FIC are quiet, and everybody's waiting for the FIC to say, yes, indeed, this is the case. Because now we can't take anything at her word. We can't take the PP at her word. And we don't take anybody at their word. So that is really the biggest story behind this. But this is it's laughable, really.
The kind of incompetence that is in place here, right, can easily be solved. Why is the PIC, or rather the FIC, quiet about this matter? We know that they're not supposed to speak. They haven't historically spoken. We know they were the ones that raised the flags around the Guptas, so they would probably have raised flags here also. What legally can the FIC do?
Well, where there's, the FIC actually has a MOU, as far as we understand, with the Public Protector's Office, where they can supply bank statements, for instance, to the PP's office in pursuit of, to help them with the investigation. But it doesn't mean that they can plug directly into these banks and say, like, I can access ABSA or FNB's accounts. They have to ask ABSA, hey, we need these. Here's the paperwork. Can you give it to us?
From your story on the broader funding, which of course is also in the City Press, it said CR payments are sparking rifts. And this talks more about the kind of, political fallouts between the foot soldiers and, the generals who sat at the top of the campaign. But the essence of the thing is obviously the train of evidence from the banks and so on. Did you see anything from the PP's office that indicates that she requests documents from the FIC?
We haven't seen that.
Has she provided you? Have you asked her?
She has not. We have asked her. We've also spoken to the FIC and asked them. They've been mum on this. One of the things which I must raise is we still are concerned because we are not out of an era of SOEs and other state entities being captured.
Yes.
So the question is, wait, are you guys playing like, by the book?
Yes.
Or are you batting for somebody?
Yes.
So, we're always asking that question, and we probably will for at least a decade to come.
This has done a lot of damage to the public's perception about the public protector, and you've effectively now got factions around this institution. People who say that she's a complete waste of time, that the courts have found her guilty on so many lapses, she should actually just resign. And then, of course, the others who are raising funds for her. We now have the DA saying they know it's going to be difficult to get rid of her through Parliament, but they're going to try anyway. What is the implications for our democracy if a Chapter 9 institution like this finds itself in this position?
I think it only strengthens our democracy. I forget now who stated last week that this is actually a good thing because it interrogates what is your role in this. Thuli Madonsela similarly did this, and she was more of a darling, of course, of the public. But still, there were question marks asked of her powers and her abilities, and it was taken to court, and it was clarified. We are a young democracy. We need to understand what are the limits here involved with Chapter 9 institutions like the Public Protector's Office.
Okay, let's go to the City Press. Now, the City Press goes into the story that, of course, has captured many people's imagination. That word captured coming up there again. CR17 payments spark rifts. Now, this talks about about the difference between what some people were paid in the campaign and others. The chairperson of SANSCO specifically, or the president, is fingered here. Yesterday, former President Thabo Mbeki spoke about this matter. What caught your attention about the way in which the story is constructed and the nub of the matter here?
I think they've done very well to tread very carefully on this matter. Now, I think the Cyril Ramaphosa 17 campaign tried to be very careful by saying we're going to work through different accounts to make sure that the money is, everybody's held accountable for how money is spent. But when you've spent 16 million rand on a fairly unknown MP like Bernice Swartz for work in Mpumalanga, where did that money go after it went to Bernice Swartz's personal account? There's questions raised over here. So, yes, we knew that, work was done out of the back of boots in the past and the like. But just because we're now saying these are going through bank accounts, ultimately when that cash ends up in people's hands, who does it then go to?
Now, of course, this is not the first time this question arises. Your political editor, Natasha Marion, writes a brilliant piece saying that the CR17 campaign tried to have a paper trail at least, to have some accountability, because people have traditionally, like you say, been doing it out of the boot of their cars. But it still doesn't answer the question, does it? Do we need intra-party regulation, do you think?
I think it can only be a good thing. I mean, ultimately, these guys are always going to find ways to move money around and to pay. But I think we still have to raise the bar and make it more difficult, because it helps to keep a lid on these things, on the corruption getting completely out of hand.
Now, the question of intra-party funding is a big issue. We saw in the case of Musi Maimane and the fight with Wilmot James. Wilmot James raised his own campaign funding, declared it. Musi is still to tell us who funded him. He's the one who waved the letter in Parliament asking the president, is your son linked to Bosasa? He raised the question again. Are politicians just milking this? I mean, the EFF, as we know, was funded by someone who has huge legal difficulties with SARS to register their company, or rather their party, to campaign in their very first national election. The bill that we have at the moment that's now been enacted, is it going to actually regulate what needs to be regulated, Beauregard?
It's going to regulate part of what needs to be regulated. It's going to regulate the funding going directly to parties, but it's not going to regulate intra-party funding. And like I said, so the bill needs to actually be extended before it's actually really kicked in. Remember, there was that 6-month grace.
Yes.
So it hasn't actually really started. So they still get a pass for this past election. So really, it needs to go further. But as far as, other political parties and political players are concerned, of course they're milking it. I'm seeing people flip-flop on these kind of things. And I mean, in politics, anything is game. And what I say tomorrow doesn't matter. As long as I can take care of my enemy today, that's what matters.
And of course, the big question for the president is, did he lie or not about the extent of his knowledge of where this money is going to? That question hasn't really been settled, has it?
No, it hasn't. There's that whole idea of that. What they wanted to create was plausible deniability. It's quite a well-known phrase. But what has happened is, when we saw, and we must point out, there's a very small selection of emails which came out, I think it was in the Sunday Independent a few weeks ago, which speaks to Cyril Ramaphosa being part of a conversation about the disbursements of money, which suggests that, well, you weren't completely removed from this, were you?
Yeah. Now, the Sunday Times has an interesting front page. Take us through what you make of Mr. Rupert and the heist that went down, and that's apparently the reason why he wants to leave the country.
I don't think Mr. Rupert will leave the country. I don't think his businesses will leave the country, because he will continue being a multi-billionaire because of his success. And I mean, he's one of our great success stories. As far as this heist goes, it's a fantastic story, lots of money stolen, 200,000 Rand watches stolen. It's a nice distraction because I'm sure Mr. Rupert is probably insured and he'll get his money back. It's a great irritation for him. It's a lovely story. We have wonderful filmmakers. I'm sure they'll pick up this material and they'll make a great movie out of it.
But it's a lot of money, and as you say, it's a man with access to very high-tech security, which means that our criminals are actually getting much more sophisticated, isn't it?
They are, but I mean, if you look at how this was done, it's not like it was super high-tech. It was a little bit farcical. So the one security company goes to the other security company, but it's ADT going to check with Stallion. Hey, everything okay? Everything's okay. Okay, then it's all good, and I walk away. That's not very high-tech, you know.
Maybe the police should start there.
I think so.
Okay, let's look at the other papers. There's an interesting story about Robert Marawa in one of the Sunday, I think it's the Sunday Sun. Yeah, talk to us about this story and, you know, why it's important. I mean, he's been at the center of a lot of issues at the public broadcaster, but he's also a very well-known personality.
Yeah. I mean, look, love him or hate him, Robert Marawa is a national treasure. You know, he is the most well-known sporting personality in the country. He's done a fantastic thing by actually starting his own channel because he's had this back and forth with the SABC and now with SuperSport, who actually booted him unceremoniously. Third heart attack, at the age of 46. People like myself, we worried about that because we're seeing the same thing happening. We peers here, me and Roberto. So it's like, hey, you know, and I think it's important for us to take note, and it's great that he's come out and said, yo, this is a big thing, guys, and he's speaking to the public, he's engaging about this. So I think all of us, we wish him the best, yeah?
Okay, now, just in terms of, you know, the news going forward for the week. We've seen, for example, various court cases that's been going. What you're keeping your eye on as the Mail and Guardian, I know you like to keep your powder dry until Thursday evening, but what do you think is likely to set the agenda as we go forward this week? What are the big things that you guys are looking out for or that people should just keep their eye out for?
I think the payments towards the Cyril Ramaphosa's 2017 campaign to become ANC president and by default president of the country, that is going to be the biggest story. The public protector remains a big story, but things are going to slow down. As my colleague Franny Rabkin reminded me, a lot of the urgent matters are now out of the way. So the big thing that we're now watching is the EFF when they want to actually become a friend of the court. It's really about access to information.
Yes.
Because he who controls the information has the power.
Exactly. And do you think that the information about the other candidates, like the NDZs of the world and so on, is going to pop up? Has anything popped up in your WhatsApp box or in your inbox?
We actually had something last year about NDZ and monies that came through Free State, right, for her campaign.
Yes.
And it made it went plop, the story.
Okay.
It did not go splash.
Okay.
But, I mean, you must understand, this is the president of our country. We have to hold into account. We must interrogate.
Absolutely. And also, of course, I think that there's more at stake in getting the story to dominate the headlines. Beauregard, thank you so very much. Well, that's your fix for the week. Take care. See you again next week.